Gordon was already in bed and nearly asleep. It had been an exhausting week. Friday night, a glass of red wine with his wife at dinner. He was about to fall asleep when the phone on the bedside table loudly announced that there was a new message. Gordon cursed to himself as he forgot to mute the phone. In fact, he had turned up the volume in the morning as he waited for the call from the car service to finally pick up the car after repairs. He had called them 3 times, and they kept promising him that the car would be ready soon, but they never called him back. As a result, the sound of the notification on his phone nearly woke his wife. Gordon took the phone. The picture on the screen blurred before his eyes. He blinked a few times and could see what was on the screen. An unread WhatsApp message. Who was still awake at this late hour? Gordon opened the app. The unread message was next to Ivy's picture. His heart started pounding. His eyes brightened, and he fell sleepless. He pulled his legs out from under the blanket as quietly as possible, because his wife was asleep, and put on his slippers. "Where are you going?" Sarah woke up and looked at her spouse. To the bathroom. I don't feel well, but don't worry. Sleep," her husband replied, and hurried to the bathroom. The best place for texting. "How are you?" a message said. It was just an ordinary, innocuous question. The important thing was who asked that question. 4 years ago, Gordon had met Ivy, a beautiful, young, absolutely gorgeous woman, and he felt he was willing to do anything for Ivy, to give up everything and not think about the consequences. Even simply walking along the street with her and holding her hand was a pleasure. There was no question about who was going to the parent-teacher meetings at school, about car insurance or anything else. No, everything like that was at home with Sarah. But with Ivy, it felt like happiness. Real happiness. Obviously, later Sarah found out about her husband's affair. There was a tremendous scandal. He packed his bags and moved in with Ivy. After all, that's the way it was supposed to be. We have only one life, and we must live it with the one we love. Besides, he had promised Ivy to divorce his wife and live together. At first, Sarah called him, texted, yelled at him, and argued with her husband. Her friends and relatives bombarded him with endless calls and messages. He tried to protect himself, and the woman he loved was there to support him. After a month, everything suddenly calmed down. Gordon finally breathed a sigh of relief. He spent his days and nights full of happiness with Ivy. It was so good, so pleasant as if the birds were singing. But no news from Sarah, no news about his sons, no news about anything. She could at least text a message. Gordon had called the children several times. The older, David, always limited himself to 2 or 3 phrases, saying that everything was fine, no news, I had to go to classes, or to the movies with friends, or anywhere else. Bye, Dad. And the youngest just wouldn't pick up the phone, no matter how many times Gordon called him. Then Gordon saw his wife and son at the grocery store. Ivy sent him alone to get groceries while she stayed home. Sarah and David were picking out groceries, laughing and looking happy. Gordon stood aside and watched in silence. They didn't see him, and he didn't dare to approach. And a few days later, Ivy met him at home after work with happy eyes and handed him an envelope. Gordon opened it. A court summons. Divorce. "I'm so happy you finally decided to divorce your wife," said Ivy. She hugged him from behind as he read the same words for the third time. A court hearing is scheduled for October 16th at 12:40 p.m. Everything is crystal clear. Happy, Ivy went into the kitchen to make tea. She even bought a cake and a bottle of wine to celebrate. Except Gordon never dared to file for divorce, so Sarah made that decision herself. The man thought about it. So that's it. He saw Sarah in the courtroom. She looked so beautiful, and her new blue dress looked good on her. She looked much younger and fitter now. The hearing ended quickly and with nothing. They were given a month to think about it. Besides, they had children. They needed time to decide with whom they would live and how child support would be paid. Gordon waited for his wife outside the courtroom. He invited her for coffee and to talk about everything. But they didn't talk about how much child support Gordon would pay or when he would spend time with them. They talked about how, years ago, they'd eaten grilled chicken together on the floor after work in a rented apartment. Back then, they didn't even have a table in the apartment they could afford to rent, and about how they spent their honeymoon abroad and how awesome it was, and that David was born underweight and how the doctors fought for his life. Now he was a big boy, a triathlete. They had been through so many things together. Gordon put his hand on his wife's. She didn't pull it away. Then they said goodbye to each other and went home. Ivy met Gordon at home with champagne, and when she heard he would divorce his wife in a month, she was even happier, turned up the music, and danced in the middle of the room. Gordon stared at her. He felt depressed. Sarah didn't text or call. 3 days later, he called himself and suggested meeting on a weekend, just the two of them. She said she would come another day and another time because she had plans for the weekend. Sarah had plans for the weekend, her own plans, without him. Gordon listened silently to the information and agreed to meet on a day that was convenient for Sarah. He lied to Ivy about where he was going and bought a bouquet of flowers for his wife. Why? He didn't know. But Sarah didn't show up. She texted at the last minute that she couldn't come, apologized, and rescheduled the meeting for tomorrow at the same time. She didn't even feel the need to explain why. Gordon had to give flowers to Ivy and said it was without a reason, just to please her. The next day his wife came to the meeting. He bought her flowers again. Sarah said thank you and smiled. Her smile was so warm, so dear, and he almost lost her through his own fault. They started seeing each other more often, but never discussed the divorce. He gave her flowers and presents, called her often, and hid it from Ivy. He lied more and more. Now he had an even more whirlwind romance with his almost ex-wife. Gordon had no idea it could be like this. They didn't have this kind of passion even when they started dating. He was completely immersed in this affair and didn't even remember what he had told Ivy, what he had promised. Often he messed up and forgot some things, and she looked at him with bewilderment and did not understand what was wrong with him. Endless quarrels began. He couldn't believe that Ivy could yell and insult him so much. And Sarah, she came to the next court hearing as if nothing had happened and said she hadn't changed her mind. Gordon didn't wait for her out of the courtroom this time. He just decided to leave Ivy today and go back to his wife. Asshole! Bastard, you insensitive brute! Ivy angrily insulted him nonstop. Gordon expected that he would calmly pack his bags, and Ivy would cry quietly on the bed, hugging her knees. No, nothing like that. His cheeks still burned from the slaps. Ivy tried to punch him several times, but Gordon gently pushed her away. Played enough, bastard, huh? Tired of the pretty doll? Want to go back to your ugly wife? Ivy continued to swear. 2 sweaters that he hadn't had time to put in his bag flew out the window. Am I boring you? How is she going to live with you, sleep with you, eat at the same table? You betrayed her. You ruined her life. Does she even wait for you? Cried Ivy. Gordon was already putting his shoes on in the hallway and opening the door. Something hard hit him in the back. He turned around. A roll of paper towels was lying on the stairwell. Ivy closed the door loudly. Gordon rang the doorbell for a long time. No one opened it. Apparently no one was home. Then maybe he should make dinner. He decided to surprise them. The key didn't fit the lock. Had Sarah changed the locks? But why? He called her several times, but she didn't pick up. His son didn't pick up the phone either. He had to spend the night in a hotel. In the evening, he finally reached his wife, told her everything about Ivy, and asked for a meeting. They met only a day later because Sarah was busy. She was totally indifferent to the news about Ivy. There were no happy exclamations, or at least a smile, or a shine in her eyes. Gordon had expected something like, "Hooray, my husband's back." But there was none of that. Sarah only said it was his choice and his decision. After all, it was his life. It's not going to be like it was before. She had had enough of the rare encounters and didn't need anything else. As it turned out, she was still going to get a divorce. She felt sorry that he had no place to live, but it was a consequence of his decisions. So there is no one to blame. She did not give him a key to the apartment. They will sort everything out after the court divides their property. He didn't expect such a turn of events. Then there was a room in a hostel on the outskirts of the city. It turned out that he was not earning as much as he had previously thought. The hotel was an affordable pleasure only for a short period of time. Eventually, they got divorced. Gordon got a car, a garage, and a land plot. He could have sold everything and bought a place to live, but in spite of all the events, Gordon still believed he had a chance to get things back the way they were. It took more than a year to win his wife back and get married again. It took even longer to gain his son's trust. And then, when everything was finally back on track, he got a message from Ivy. It was late at night, and he was sitting in the bathroom with his phone. His legs were stiff, which meant he had been sitting there for a long time. He realized he had forgotten to do a small but important thing: block a contact, and then delete the number from his address book. That was it. He went back into the bedroom and crawled under the warm blanket. It was time for bed. Our mistakes cost us too much to repeat.